the time. Your gateway to the world. AFR. American Freedom Radio. Give it to them.
Get real and heal. Listen to Christie on Soul Journeys Radio.
All right. Good evening, everyone, and happy Tuesday. It is February 5, 2013, and hope you had a lovely day. Thanks so much for joining us here tonight. Soul Journeys Radio on AmericanFreedomRadio.com. As you know, this is the first Tuesday of the month, so we are joined by our gardening expert, Heather Rhoades of GardeningKnowHow.com. She is a lifetime gardener who owns and operates the site where her and other garden experts help answer all of your questions on various gardening topics. And we are blessed to have her join us the first Tuesday of every month. So she will be answering your questions tonight. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to give us a call at 218-339-8525. That's 218-339-8525. And if you'd like to join us on the text chat, that's over at souljourneysradio.com. And I know you're thinking, well, it's February. What do we need to do, in our gardens? Don't we have to wait till spring or summer? And I guess the truth is gardening is a year-round venture. So it's so good to have you here tonight, Heather. And I guess last month we missed you. It was, New Year's Day, so station was shut down. So we missed you.
I missed you guys too.
Yay. How was your Christmas and New Year and all of that good stuff?
It was good. We had a great time. I got some new and fun toys. So
toys?
Toys.
Like a rototiller and a backhoe. And
I got a special new office built back in my garden. So
nice.
I now have my own little space I can go to right out inside my garden. So
in your garden. How cool. How'd you build that?
We actually bought a shed, and my husband finished out the inside of the shed into an office. So
excellent.
So I have a little gardening shed that's now where I exist in the gardening know-how world.
Excellent. That sounds really cool, but I'm confused. Isn't it normally we put the men out in the shed?
No. When you need to get away, you need to go to your garden, and I have to work, so I need a desk, and I can go to my garden now.
Yay! And have some peace.
That's right. So
excellent. Well, very cool. All right. Well, how's the garden coming along for you in Ohio this time of year?
If I could see it under the 2 feet of snow, I'd let you know.
2 feet. Amazing. Yeah.
We've gotten the lake effects the past couple days, lake effect snow, which is unique to the Great Lakes region. But to be honest, I'm thankful for it. While looking at the snow makes me kind of sad because I can't go out and garden. All that snow is insulating all the plants underneath it, keeping them safe and warm and happy for the winter. So I am thankful for it on that level.
Excellent. Okay. Well, we're having another one of those weird winters. I mean, it was cold as can be, but still no snow. We got a little bit of dusting a couple times, and I think, a little white out on my windshield, but that's it. You blink and it's gone, and I don't know. I think if it's going to be that cold, at least give us something pretty to look at.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. And like I said, it's actually more dangerous to your plants to have no snow than to have snow. So when it gets cold, pray for snow.
Definitely. Snow. And you know what? That's a really good point. So why don't we talk about that? Why do we need snow, or why is it beneficial for our gardens and plants and just vegetation in general?
Well, if anybody has ever built an igloo or, a snow fort when you were a kid, or taken a survival course and read about digging into the snow, it's because it's a great insulator.
Okay.
And insulation is not meant to keep you warm. Insulation is meant to keep things at a constant temperature. And that's what's important for your plants this time of year, is that they stay at a constant temperature. So for yourself, it can keep, if you dig yourself a little cubby in the snow, your body heat gets trapped inside. For your plants in the ground, it keeps it at the same constant cold temperature. And they do need the cold this time of year. That's how they know how to sleep, that it's time to sleep. So the snow helps keep the ground and your plants at a constant temperature. Because what kills plants in the wintertime is a fluctuation in temperature.
Okay.
It's those days, here in Cleveland, we had a day 2 weeks ago, 65 degrees in January.
Oh, wow. You know what? We had that once, too. I think January 11th. It ended up just out of the blue. It's in the teens and, single digits and just like 65 one day, just out of the blue. Huh.
And it's not healthy for your plants this time of year to go up like that. If you have some snow on the ground and you get that, it still takes some time for the snow to melt, and it's able to keep the ground at a constant temperature, so the roots of your plants are safer if you have a covering of snow when you have those fluctuations in temperature.
Okay. And what about for bugs? Do they need snow? My favorite, squash bugs and ticks and all of those things. Do they need snow to kind of freeze them and kill them, or will they will it kill them just being cold enough? It'll kill them just being cold enough. Okay.
Plants that survive in your area, they let out their antifreeze. When it starts getting cold, your plants start producing a sort of antifreeze in their system. So they're able to withstand, if the plant is a zone 5, it's able to withstand temperatures typical for zone 5 in the wintertime. Your squash bugs and stuff like that, the more cold you get, the better you are, because the more they die.
Oh, good. So hopefully this year won't be like last year.
Last year we didn't have a lot of cold. We had a lot of fluctuation in temperature, and that was a major concern for a lot of people, is that they were going to end up with, a lot of bugs, because there just wasn't the cold temperatures needed to kill off a significant portion of the population. So hopefully we don't end up with that next year.
Yeah. Okay, so it's been a relatively cold winter for you this time around?
It's been relatively cold. We've had some weird day or days of really warm weather, but for the most part it's been cold. So as much as I don't like it, it is good for the plants that grow in my region.
Yeah, so they need their rest just like we do.
Yes, they do.
Okay. All right. Well, Heather, you were telling me before the show, I thought this might be, kind of a good topic for us to talk about. Your son just had a science project at school, and he's been keeping a wormery for the past few weeks. So tell us about that, because this might be a fun project for us to do, or for our children as well.
Sure. We made a worm bin, and we made a wormery, which is wormery looks just like an ant farm, except it has worms instead of ants. And the worm bin, worm bins are great for, especially over the winter. Having a worm bin, you can put your compostable scraps in to your worm bin, and the worms can eat it instead of having to trudge out to your compost pile out in the cold snow.
Yeah.
The wormery is fun for kids. My son, he built his own. We used some scrap wood and some plexiglass from the hardware store, and made a little. Like I said, looks just like an ant farm. Put some dirt in there. Went to the Gander Mountain and bought some red wigglers, and put them in there, and he got to observe how worms live in the soil, and he learned a lot about how worms help the soil and help our gardens grow. And so we were laughing because he has to do a presentation, so he was drawing pictures of the things he had learned. In one of the pictures, he had put a worm coming out of the ground to a porta potty on top of the soil.
That's so cute.
To represent him, it's to represent the worm leaving their castings on the soil. So not quite sure how his teacher's going to go with that one, but I thought it was adorable. So.
It is cute. And I mean, essentially, we are eating, worm poop, right?
So, yeah, I mean, it's, worm poop is one of the best things you can put in your soil. It really is. I mean, it's right up there with, the best compost and the best, composted or well-rotted manure that you could find. Mm-hmm. People may think that worms are icky, but the more you have in your garden, the better they are. So.
Okay, so let's say I want to start a little wormery right now. What would I need? What kind of materials would I need? And what would I have to do?
Well, the wormery, it's just like a little window. And we put, once we built it, we use one by to make the sides and the bottom and top. And just cut it at an angle. And like I said, made a little rectangle, glued on some plexiglass. We filled the bottom with about 1 inch to 2 inches of sand. And that's just to help with drainage because worms are affected by too much water as much as they're affected by not enough water. So that allows for some drainage. We use some caulking around the plexiglass to keep the water from going everywhere. And then we went out into the yard and we dug up some soil just straight from the yard. You don't want to use potting soil in a wormery.
Okay.
They need the soil out there. They need the grit in the soil to help them digest. That's the same if you start a worm bin, and there's lots and lots of directions online. You can start a worm bin in a $5 Tupperware container.
Okay.
So there's lots of directions out online on how to do a worm bin. For those who don't want to do a science fair project that you actually just want to compost indoors. But when you start a worm bin, you need to put some soil from outside in the worm bin as well because they need the grit to digest their food correctly.
Okay.
And
their food is essentially in the soil, or do we need to add anything to it?
For the most part, if you're just keeping a wormery, they can take what's in the soil. But if you're keeping an actual worm bin, you can take all of your compostable scraps, and that means your vegetable scraps, not your meat scraps, not your oil scraps, things like butter and that sort of thing. Just your vegetable scraps, and you can put it in the worm bin, and they'll eat the vegetable scraps the same as they will the soil. So, but in a wormery, you don't need to give them any additional food. Although we didn't get to that point, we had thought about putting some vegetable scraps in there to see if they would be attracted to it, but we didn't get that far. So,
Okay.
And yeah, and you add some water about once a week just to keep the soil nice and moist because the worms need moisture. So it was a fun experiment, and it gave them a really good view of how worms get into the soil and help with making plants grow.
Okay. All right. So let's say I wanted to start a wormery tomorrow. How long would I want to keep it going that way before I actually put them into my garden beds?
If you're just doing a wormery for like a science project, as long as you want to keep them in there, you can. As long as you keep them moist, they'll be happy. If you're keeping a worm bin, which is just basically a larger wormery, you can keep them in there indefinitely as long as they have enough food and enough moisture. They're happy in there for forever. You do need to, when you're doing anything indoors with worms, you do need to use the red wrigglers instead of night crawlers. Night crawlers need temperatures to be around 50 degrees, and most people's houses are not kept at about 50 degrees. So
no. Okay.
So
red wigglers.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they go by, I think when we bought them at the bait shop, they had them listed as some sort of flatfish or something about some sort of type of fishing worms. They go by several names, but typically if you ask for red wigglers, they'll know what you mean. And they're the smaller worms. They're about 3, maybe 4 inches long tops, rather skinny, rather than those big fat ones that you typically find, in your yard.
Okay. Now, how fast, how quickly do they reproduce? Let's say you start off with 10 worms. How long will it take you to get to 100? I
can't say exactly how long, but they do reproduce very quickly. So typically, if you just go buy a package of, they sell them anywhere from a dozen to 2 dozen in a pack, and they have a special refrigerator in the bait. You could just get it at the bait shop, and They typically will reproduce pretty quickly. You're not looking at more than, a month or 2 before you have more worms than you started out with. So.
Okay. Now, what about, how are your worms or your son's worms now? Are they safe in school? Is he going to be able to bring them back home?
Well, my kids are homeschooled, kind of. Well, we could talk about that.
I'm sorry. Hold that right there. It's that time, but we will be back after this short break. Stay tuned. Heather Rhoades of GardeningKnowHow.com here on Soul Journeys Radio.
It's time to get real and heal. MyTrueEssence.net would like to tell you about Modifiland brown seaweed extract. It's composed of an elementally rich seaweed called laminaria. It takes 40 pounds of laminaria to make just 1 pound of Modifiland. There's nothing else like Modifiland. It is the richest in alginate, fucoidin, organic iodine, and lamarian. Alginates are the most effective organic element in nature that enable the body to rid itself of heavy metals, radioactive elements, and toxins. Fucoidin is an extremely effective anti-cancer substance found abundantly in brown seaweed. Organic iodine is the greatest protection for the thyroid offered by nature. Laminarin aids in the prevention and treatment of cardiovascular disease. Go to www.mytrueessence.net and click the Modifiland banner to get started on your path to rich health today. Also check out the Healing Shop for proven essential oils, medicinal teas, and even health coaching. It's time to get real and heal. Go to www.mytrueessence.net.
Get real and heal. Listen to Christie on Soul Journeys Radio.
No rules. No rules. No taboo topics. No taboo topics. No fear of doom. No fear of doom. We are American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
Right, welcome back, and thanks again for joining us here tonight. Soul Journeys Radio on AmericanFreedomRadio.com. Our special guest tonight is Heather Rhoades of GardeningKnowHow.com. She is here answering your questions tonight. And, of course, she probably has all the questions answered already on the website at GardeningKnowHow.com, so go check it out. And if you're listening to the archive, just, feel free to message them on their contact form, and they will find an expert in that particular area of your garden needs. Of course, if you'd like to talk to her tonight, the phone number is 218-339-8525. That's 218-339-8525. And if you'd like to join us on the text chat, that's over at Soul Journeys Radio. .com. And Heather, so are the worms safe?
They're safe. Yeah, my son goes to school online. We're one of the lucky states that has charter schools.
Okay.
So it's a public school and it's paid for by the state, but he gets to go to school online. And then they have events like science fairs and this sort of thing he goes to.
Okay. Awesome.
So the wormery has been at home this whole time, and he has been observing it, and it's actually been a very fast. He and his younger brother were absolutely fascinated by this project. They had a lot of fun with it. So, if you're looking for a science fair project, I'm just saying, they thought it was really cool that they got to keep worms as pets.
Yeah, I bet. That's definitely a boy thing to do. So he's taking good care of them. Are they reproducing rapidly?
He's taken good care of them. They've stayed alive. We did think, we're not sure, we haven't seen baby worms yet, but we did think we saw egg cases, observing the burrows. We think we see some egg cases in there. So, it's been about, I think, 2.5 weeks, almost 3 weeks that he's had it. So I'm expecting that we'll have some baby worms shortly. So, it really has been a fun project for the boys and really got them excited about, not only science, but, the gardening as well.
Awesome. So what is he going to do? What are his plans for his wormery? Do they go to Mom's garden?
I think right now he's just going to keep it. We'll see what happens in the springtime. We still, here in Cleveland, we still have a good 2 months before spring really gets here. So I think that he'll just keep going with it, and then we'll see in the spring if he lets them go or if he keeps them. And that'll be his decision. So.
All right. Well, do they help much in the garden?
The worms?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness, worms are some of the best things you can put in your garden.
No, I'm sorry.
I was like,
children worms.
My younger son, not the one who did the worm project, but my younger son, he has taken an interest in gardening. I have not really pushed it too much. Okay. And the reason being is gardening for me is a time of peace, and I love my children, but gardening with children can be a lot of fun. It's also sometimes pretty difficult. So it's nice with my younger son. He likes to get into the garden and plant things. He doesn't always remember to weed or water or things like that, and he wants to do the fun part. He doesn't want to do the not so fun part. My eldest, he actually last year while his dad was deployed, he became my gardener. I paid him $100 a week to spend 20 hours a week weeding and doing all the things that I couldn't get to, having somebody missing from my household. So I think he enjoyed it a lot.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah, no, I understand the whole love-hate relationship. Gardenwood, it is fun. The harvest and such was always fun, but when it came down to, like weeding or watering or things like that, a fight broke out. So it's like, okay, get out of my garden.
Yeah.
I'll let you know when the radishes are ready. Yeah. And speaking of radishes, I know it's February and most of you are thinking, well, what can we learn or what can we be doing in our garden now? And for a lot of us, we can start planting our cold crops already, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there who can get their cold crops in, mid-March. Even here in Cleveland, it's Ides of March is when you're supposed to plant your peas.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's really not that far off. So it's time to start thinking about your cabbages, broccolis, cauliflowers, things like that, and what you want to grow.
Definitely. Now, they are cold crops, so let me ask you, would it be beneficial to start the seeds indoors like we usually do with tomatoes and such? Or
yeah.
Cold crops, would that be too much of a shock to go from 70, indoors out to, 40 outdoors? Well,
you still have to acclimate them, the same as you do, but it's not too much to start them indoors. And we often I call them cold, COLD crops, but they're actually I guess if you were speaking botanically, they're cole crops, which is COLE. And most of the time, most of us call it cold because they like cold.
Yeah.
But COLE crops just means that they thrive better when the soil temperature is lower. So, most of us have a window that's probably a little bit drafty, and that's a good place to be putting them. Your basement is a good place. Somewhere where they're just, not on top of a heater, is good. Cold crops just means that, they have a they're part of the brassica. I can never pronounce it correctly. Family, basically broccoli family, broccoli and cabbage. And the thing with those type of plants is they bolt when their roots get hot.
Okay.
So when you're talking when they're little tiny seedlings, their root temperature isn't as important because they aren't mature enough to produce seeds anyway. It's when you get them in the ground and it becomes July.
Yeah.
Produce yet that, their roots get hot and they start, throwing flowers out all over the place.
Yeah.
So you're fine. Yeah. Long story short, you're fine starting them indoors. They're perfectly happy being started indoors. Still have to acclimate to bring them outside. And it helps you get a head start on the season.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Well, I definitely have more winter or spring starting garden questions. But, we did have a listener recently asked about any tips on growing bergamot from seed.
Bergamot.
She says she was jealous at how quick my garden sprouted last year, and how did you get it to grow so fast? All I can find is these seeds, so what do I do?
Well, typically
it's a good opportunity to talk about what you would recommend for indoor seed sowing. I mean, do you use like cellophane? Do you put heat lamps on them?
Yeah, I would say with bergamot, the thing with bergamot is there are some plants that are easier to grow from seed, and there's some plants that are not. Bergamot is one of those plants.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you can grow it from seed, but if you can get a division from someone else, it's just easier on you. And some plants take a little while to reach maturity, and they don't. Why wait? So, I have bee balm in my garden. I have 2 different varieties, and I probably would not personally start it from seed. I just go, dig up a division, move it to where I wanted. Bergamot's one of those plants that typically, unless you're looking for a special variety, you can ask around, and somebody has more than enough that they're willing to share. It's a borderline invasive plant.
Okay.
It's part of the mint family, so. It's got the same tendencies as your spearmints and those sort of things, that they can run rampant if not contained, although it's not as aggressive as mints, as your typical mint are.
Okay. Now, yeah, she did say, she didn't tell us which type she was trying to grow or whatever, but said that all she could find was seeds for whatever type she did want to grow. So do you think she would benefit from, say, cellophane in a heat lamp?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say heat lamp, because just getting them started, your best bet is to actually use a heating pad to get the heat from below instead of the heat from above.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff the heating pad, put a towel over the heating pad. You don't want to put it right on top of the heating pad.
Okay.
Put it in the, just cover it lightly. Bee balm seeds are really tiny. And she may, if she's looking for bergamot and she's having trouble finding bergamot, she might, that's the botanical name. So asking for it under a common name, which is bee balm, might have better luck finding what you're looking for, just in terms of finding somebody who already has it. But starting the seeds, they're rather small seeds, so you just sprinkle it on top of the soil, and you only need a little tiny bit of soil on top of it. The rule of thumb is that you only plant a seed 3 times deeper than it is big.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have those really tiny seeds, you only need to put a really tiny amount of soil on top of them.
Okay.
Water from below. So try to get a system where you set the tray in another tray of water, and the water seeps in Because if you water from above, you can uncover the seeds or damage the really tiny seedlings.
Okay.
Put it on a heating pad if possible. If you don't have a heating pad, the top of a refrigerator works really well.
Oh, all right. That's a good idea.
I don't think that bee balm needs light to germinate, so you don't need to worry about that. You can keep them in the dark until you start seeing the seedlings.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you have the seedlings, then you need to move them to a location where they can get some light.
Okay. Now, you mentioned with the smaller seeds, you need less soil. And, that's what I learned, like, with growing tobacco. My first time, of course, I put them in the ground, like an inch deep, and nothing happened. And then I found out, you're just kind of supposed to sprinkle them on top. So is that true all the way around the board with smaller seeds?
Yeah, most smaller seeds only need a very tiny bit of soil on top of them.
Okay.
Also read your instructions carefully for your seeds when you buy seeds. Some seeds do need light to germinate. Not most, but enough where you should read the directions, and if it says light required for germination, don't cover them with soil at all. You just sprinkle them on top, and you're done.
Okay.
But if you have really tiny seeds, Nigella seeds, or bee balm seeds, tobacco seeds are really small.
Yeah.
You just put them on top, and all you need is just sprinkle it on like you're putting salt, on a dish.
Yeah.
And that's all you need to cover them up. Now you get bigger seeds. You get your tomato seeds, which are a little bit bigger. Again, 3 times as deep as they are big. So you're only going to be looking at 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch tops that you're going to be planting those.
Okay. All right. So what about a bigger seed, like, say, a grapefruit seed?
Same thing. So, you're looking at 3 times the size. So, you're going to be down 1 inch to 2 inches into the soil at that point in time.
Okay. That's an awesome rule of thumb. Thanks for sharing. And speaking of citrus, we do have a listener that would like to know, I was out in Arizona recently, and everyone has almost, at least half the people in the neighborhoods have some kind of citrus tree. And some, oh my God, it was heaven. I have not tasted just like that for so long. It's darn, I'm out of those right now. We got to take a break, but get back to this question after. Stay tuned, everyone. Heather Rhoades of GardeningKnowHow.com here on SoulJourneysRadio.com.
It's time to get real and heal. MyTrueEssence.net would like to tell you about Modifiland brown seaweed extract. It's composed of an elementally rich seaweed called laminaria. It takes 40 pounds of laminaria to make just 1 pound of Modifiland. There's nothing else like Modifiland. It is the richest in alginate, fucoidin, organic iodine, and lamarian. Alginates are the most effective organic element in nature that enable the body to rid itself of heavy metals, radioactive elements, and toxins. Fucoidin is an extremely effective anti-cancer substance found abundantly in brown seaweed. Organic iodine is the greatest protection for the thyroid offered by nature. Laminarin aids in the prevention and treatment of cardiovascular disease. Go to www.mytrueessence.net and click the Modifiland banner to get started on your path to rich health today. Also check out the Healing Shop for proven essential oils, medicinal teas, and even health coaching. It's time to get real and heal. Go to www.mytrueessence.net.
Get real and heal. Listen to Christie on Soul Journeys Radio.
Yo, what's up? Check this out. The voice of the revolution. American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
For joining us here tonight, SoulJourneysRadio.com with our special guest, Heather Rhoades of GardeningKnowHow.com, answering your questions tonight. And we left off on the citrus thing, and oh my God, I miss those oranges. It's just so hard to get good. Well, actually, it's probably impossible to get good citrus out here. But I was in heaven. But, I noticed it was really strange that, I would think that they would all bloom, maybe not exactly on the same day in sync, but for instance, one of the people I stayed with next door, the trees were in full bloom, yet at the house I was staying at hadn't bloomed at all. And then another house I stayed at, theirs was just starting to bloom. So it was really interesting to see, the discrepancies of when each of them would start to bloom. But we kind of talked a little bit about that during the break. So can you tell us, and I found an article on your site, which I posted in the text chat over at souljourneysradio.com. So what causes citrus to bloom?
Well, citrus is a little unusual in the plant world in that it blooms when it's under stress. So typically, for your typical citrus tree, that's going to be the winter time because it's a little bit colder, it's getting a little bit less water, it's under stress, and it's a stress response. It goes into full bloom. And as a way to save itself, to tell you the truth, it's worried that it's going to die. So it needs to make babies. It's kind of like the baby boom of the citrus world.
Okay.
And what can also, I didn't mention this on the break, but I was thinking what can also cause, a lot of times in areas like Arizona where you have your neighbor, they're growing, fruit in their yard. It's also where they fertilize their lawn. And lawn fertilizer is very high in nitrogen. Oh. And nitrogen can actually suppress a plant's ability to bloom.
Oh, okay.
It's a question we get a lot of times, especially for your typical lawn trees like dogwoods, magnolias, that sort of thing. They can't get them to bloom. Oh. And when you find out a little further, you find out that they're really adamant about fertilizing their lawn. And the plant's taking in too much nitrogen, which suppresses its ability to bloom. So you would want to plant like a bunch of red clover around your orange tree. It's more of a problem when you're dealing with commercial fertilizer than a natural source like that.
Okay.
It's because you're basically super exposing a plant to nitrogen when you're using a lawn fertilizer.
Okay.
So it could be that the trees were blooming at different times simply because they were coming into stress at slightly different times.
Huh.
It also could be that, especially the person you mentioned who had no blooms whatsoever, it could be that they just, they used a lot of fertilizer this past year, on their lawn, and that could be causing the tree to suppress its blooming.
Okay. Now, all right. Now, my friend here, a listener to the show whose tree started blooming late, says that they're not really, very orangey, kind of tough inside and hard to get into any juice out of it. Do you know what would be causing that?
That could be caused a lot of times by watering issues while the fruit is growing. Dry fruit is caused by a lot of watering issues.
Okay.
To make sure you increase your watering. You see it too in the vegetable garden, although not to the same extent as with citrus fruit. But, when the fruit is growing, it has all those little tiny sacs inside, and you need to fill them with water.
Yeah.
And the tree will sacrifice the fruit before it sacrifices itself.
Okay.
So if the tree's not getting quite enough water, it may look healthy itself, but it's going to restrict water to the fruit.
Okay, so then how much is enough water? And, Arizona, of course, I think you mentioned in the summer they need what? Sometimes up to 3 times a day?
If they're in a container, yeah. If they're in the ground, it's going to be at least 2 inches of water a week. In fruit, I would actually increase that to 5 or 6 inches a week to keep them happy. And watering needs to happen as far out as the canopy goes.
Okay.
I see a lot of people, they'll water their plant, they'll walk up to the trunk of the plant or even the trunk of the tree, and they'll pour the water right at the trunk. That does the tree no good whatsoever.
Okay, that makes perfect sense, because another thing about Arizona is they don't really have a lot of grass and such, and all the yards are, especially like around the golf courses and stuff, which are numerous, they're everywhere, it's concrete. And then, there's this little tiny area, maybe a couple feet out from the trunk of the tree that they can actually access. So would the cement above the root system have something to do with why some are less healthy than others?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Okay. So when you water your citrus trees, you don't want to water right at the trunk. You want to water as wide out as the tree itself is. Okay.
Yeah. Another handy rule of thumb, and this goes for any tree, whether it be citrus, peach, dogwood, whatever. The root system reaches out as far as the canopy reaches out. Mm-hmm. So, if your canopy is reaching out 6 feet, your root system is reaching out 6 feet. Mm-hmm. Probably a little farther. Like I said, it's a rule of thumb. It's not a hard and fast rule. It's, just to give you a general idea. Yeah. And the water needs to go out that far. To be able to the entire tree.
So what do you do in those situations? Say you moved into this house that had this beautiful tree, but, there's only like 2 feet that doesn't have concrete around it. I mean, do we have to basically bust up the concrete to water properly?
I don't think you need to bust up the concrete. It can cause some problems, but that's normally not a realistic situation for, people growing plants. They can't just, dig up their patio or something like that. What I would do is I would calculate how much water you would need to cover what the tree should be getting. Mm-hmm. And focus all of that on that 2 foot square. Don't go, okay, I put 4 inches, generally in this 2 foot circle. What you need to do is if that tree has a canopy that's 12 feet wide, you need to figure out how much water it would take to water that 12 foot area. Okay. That 12 foot circumference area. And put that into that 2 foot hole that you have.
Okay, so when you gave you said about 6 inches per tree, how large of a tree are we talking here?
Well, it's going to be 6 inches everywhere the roots go. And that's, like I said, when it's in fruit, if you want that really juicy, you look at 4 to 6 inches. 6 inches is going to be in your warmer areas like Arizona. Florida, you may only need 3, maybe 2. And that includes rainfall. So, you need to take that into your calculations as well.
Well, it never rains in Arizona.
Yeah,
so.
It doesn't rain in Arizona. So, but, typically if somebody was running a sprinkler system, mm-hmm. I would say, put a little container out, and see how much water or how long it takes to get to 2 inches or whatever, 4 inches, 6 inches, whatever you need to do. Mm-hmm. And that would cover that area. It starts getting tricky when part of that area is covered with impermeable substance where you can't get water through it. You're just going to have to tinker with it until you get the right amount. You just have to keep in mind that your tree is not getting a significant portion of its water that it should. Okay. So you need to make sure that water gets into the soil through whatever method you have. If that's a 2 foot hole, around the base of the tree, then you need to be putting enough water into that 2 foot hole that would normally go to a 12 foot circumference area.
Okay, so we're talking a lot of water here. And now we are talking about just summertime, but they bloom in winter. So how much do they need? The same amount of water in winter as they do in summer?
Typically, they don't need as much in winter. Mm-hmm. All plants tend to go dormant when it gets cooler. It's when you start to see the fruit starting to develop. Okay. So that's when you need to start upping that water. And the tricky thing with citrus too is that they can bloom when they already have fruit.
Okay.
And their fruit ripen at different times depending on what conditions they're exposed to.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I hear the music again. Goodness, this is going so fast. But we will continue this citrus discussion in Arizona when we return after these few short minutes. Stay tuned, everyone. And while you're at it, go check out her great articles at gardeningnowhow.com, and her personal blog is thisgardenisillegal.com. Stay tuned, everyone. Soul Journeys Radio.
It's time to get real and heal. MyTrueEssence.net would like to tell you about Modifiland brown seaweed extract. It's composed of an elementally rich seaweed called laminaria. It takes 40 pounds of laminaria to make just 1 pound of Modifiland. There's nothing else like Modifiland. It is the richest in alginate, fucoidin, organic iodine, and lamarium. Alginates are the most effective organic element in nature that enable the body to rid itself of heavy metals, radioactive elements, and toxins. Fucoidin is an extremely effective anti-cancer substance found abundantly in brown seaweed. Organic iodine is the greatest protection for the thyroid offered by nature. Laminarin aids in the prevention and treatment of cardiovascular disease. Go to www.mytrueessence.net and click the Modifiland banner to get started on your path to rich health today. Also check out the Healing Shop for proven essential oils, medicinal teas, and even health coaching. It's time to get real and heal. Go to www.mytrueessence.net.
Get real and heal. Listen to Christie on Soul Journeys Radio.
No rules, no rules, no taboo topics, no taboo topics, no fear of doom, no fear of doom. We are American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
All right. Welcome back. Top of the second hour here tonight with Heather Rhoades of Gardening Know-How. SoulJourneysRadio.com here, and we left off talking about citrus, especially in Arizona, where it's very, very dry. And, here's a question on the chat, Heather. It says, so if you put a rain gauge in the area and a sprinkler on the area of the roots, would that be a semi-accurate way to water 2 inches?
Yeah, that's a really great way to do it. And a rain gauge doesn't need to be fancy. It can be a juice glass with 2 inches marked off.
Okay.
You don't need to go out, or a mason jar, or whatever you have.
Okay.
So, just something that you can measure and see. And like I said, when you're watering, remember you're including rainfall. So if you're in an area that gets a lot of rain, you may not need to water nearly as much as you think you do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so you said we'll just use the 6 inches on average for an average-sized tree. Now, that's for the summer. Now, what about...
Summer in a tree that's in fruit. So,
okay, yeah, for a fruit tree in the summer. Now, what about during the blooming season, which, is fall or winter?
In areas like Arizona... you're probably going to need 2 inches, 1 to 2 inches. They need less, but it's still healthy to water them. In areas like Cleveland, not that I'm going to be growing a citrus tree outside, but for my apple trees or any tree really, you typically don't need to water. The snow melts and things like that, and plus the tree has a suppressed need for water during the winter. Mm-hmm. So you don't typically need to water in colder areas, in warmer areas, kind of 1 to 2 inches. So.
Okay, so let's give a hypothetical example here. Let's say we're working with a citrus tree that has a 6-foot canopy. We're going to assume it has a 6-foot root system, but only 2 of those feet are actually accessible. So let's say we need approximately 2 inches in the blooming season. So we would essentially have to times that by 3, then how much we're watering the 2 feet that are accessible of the root system?
That's correct.
Okay, so all right, so it would be approximately 6 inches for that particular tree or person with a tree with only the 2 foot accessible. If it was a bigger tree, or let's say it's summer and it's 6 inches, then we're going to have to do 18 inches in that space.
Into that tiny little hole. Yeah, that's what you're going to have to do. They need that much water to thrive.
Okay. All right. Well, and now besides watering or lack of water, are there any other reasons that could prevent the fruit from coming out nice and juicy?
Fertilization is typically the other big problem.
Mm-hmm.
Too much nitrogen. If you've managed to get past not suppressing the blooms, it can cause a thick rind. Too little phosphorus. We were talking on the break about I don't get really great fruit off of my little container tree here. Part of that's a combination of not enough water, and part of it's a combination of probably not enough of phosphorus.
Mm-hmm.
Trees need phosphorus to create really good fruit. Actually, any plant needs phosphorus.
Mm-hmm. Oh, did we lose you? Uh-oh. Heather, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, okay. All right, just cut out for a minute.
Have your soil tested? It's $5. UMass does your soil testing. $5, like $5 foot long, $5 soil testing.
Okay, so, and you have this information on your site, right?
Yeah, we have.
Where they can send their soil? Okay.
Yeah, some local extension services still do soil testing, so your local extension service may do it for you for free. Go in and check. If they don't do it for free, it's just $5 to send a soil sample in, find out what your plant needs. And especially when you're talking about a fruit tree, you're going to make it back in getting that first really good season of fruit, so that you don't have to go buy it at the store.
Okay, so if you don't have a local extension, you can go to UMass, and you have that link on your website. You can go to Gardening Know-How and click the search bar for soil testing, or I just clicked on the link from your site, and it takes me to soiltest.umass.edu.
Right, exactly.
For those of you not in the text chat. So, okay. All right. So basically, if you don't have a local one, you could just send it to them, and they'll tell you what you need. And let's just say a typical, average soil, how often would it need to be fertilized?
It's really going to depend on the plants and what you have going there and what type of soil. I mean, it's not something, there's no hard and fast rule. If you've got really wonderful soil that's loamy and wonderful and it's a nice layer of leaves over it that decompose, you're probably not going to need to fertilize at all. If you have soil that's really sandy and stuff just runs out of it and you haven't amended it, you're going to need to fertilize more often. I can't give a general.
Yeah. Okay, well, that makes sense. All right, so just get your soil tested and go from there. And so basically lack of water or lack of maybe phosphorus in the soil could have something to do with, the hardening rinds or even cracked fruit or lack of juice in the citrus.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when you're talking about fertilizer, I'm not a keen fan of chemical fertilizer. If you're using compost or rotted manure, it never hurts to do it at least once a year, no matter what type of soil you have.
Definitely.
So if you can just do that, just once a year, get that compost or well rotted manure in there, that'll make a marked difference.
Okay. All right. Now, once again, if you have any other questions, feel free to post them in the text chat, or you can give us a call at 218-339-8525. That's 218-339-8525. And Heather, I was looking at some of the new articles on your site, and one of them is about sprouting seed potatoes. So everybody loves potatoes, so I'd like to learn how we can sprout our potatoes.
Yeah, it's called chitting. That's more of a British term. We just say here in the States, we sprout potatoes, but chitting is a British term, and that's where the idea came from. And it's basically just it's like starting your seeds inside, except you're doing it with potatoes. And if you've ever had one of your potatoes start to grow while you were
once or twice.
Waiting to cook it.
Yeah.
And we have a wonderful article on potato bonsai, which is a lot of fun to do with kids. So.
Okay.
But it's the same concept. You're going to put them in at semi-warm location, give them a good airflow so they don't rot, and you're just encouraging them to start growing in your house, and then you're going to plant them out in your garden.
Okay, so essentially, I guess they're already sprouting when we leave them in the bags too long, right?
Right.
Okay, and I'm looking at the cute little potato bonsai tree. I guess you would just cut off little pieces of that and then plant them in the soil?
Well, with a potato bonsai, that's more of a children's project.
Mm-hmm.
The sprouts that come off on white potatoes, or not sweet potatoes, I guess. Sweet potatoes you cut off the little pieces that grow off. They're called slips.
Mm-hmm.
Starchy potatoes, on the other hand, you don't cut off the sprouts. When you're doing a potato bonsai, you're actually making a bonsai tree out of the potato sprouts.
Yeah.
Sprouting out. But if you're going to be growing them in your garden, you just you'll take it, you'll sprout it. Some people like to cut them up into pieces. You need each one of the eyes as they turn into sprouting growth, can grow into its own plant. So some people like to cut up the potato. That has some dangers when you start cutting up your seed potato.
Okay.
You're opening it to rot and bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, you could get a seed potato and get 4 plants out of it. You could also end up with all of those sections of the seed potato dying because of rot.
Oh, okay. So you're saying you could just plant the whole potato even if it has multiple shoots?
Yeah.
No need for cutting. Okay.
Right, you don't cut. It's one of those. It's a pro and con sort of thing. Which one would be best, but it is something to keep in mind is that if you cut it, you could kill it. If you don't cut it, you're not going to get as many plants out of it, but it's still going to grow as healthy and you have a better chance of it thriving.
Okay. And when is the best time to plant our potatoes?
You really want to plant them while it's still kind of cool. Around the same time you do your cabbage. They like it earlier and cooler. I know that was a mistake I made early on. I didn't plant my potatoes until we've gotten full into spring, and they like it a little bit cooler at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a great article on growing potatoes in straw bales.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm.
So that's something I'm going to be. I've never personally done straw bales before, so I'm going to be doing that this year.
Okay.
So I'm sure a lot of people have heard. When I was a kid, my mom always grew potatoes in tires.
Oh, all right. Now, is there any danger of the chemicals of the tire leaching into the soil?
Yeah. I was just going to say, that's one of those things again. I haven't grown potatoes in tires. My mom always grew them. I grew up okay,
Okay.
But, you can find food safe barrels will work the same way as tires. Or even just creating, you don't have to plant them in the ground, I guess is the point. You can plant them in a column, and just stuff leaves or grass clippings are another popular thing to stuff around the potatoes as they grow.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people like to plant them in this sort of vertical environment, and they feel that they produce more potatoes that way.
Okay. All right. So potatoes would be an early crop then.
Yeah, you want to plant them earlier than later.
Okay. Good to know. All right. My first time growing potatoes was actually by accident. It was in my compost. And all of a sudden, this pretty green thing just started shooting out, in my greens. And I'm like, what the heck? So I realized, oh my gosh, these are potatoes. How did they get there? And so anyways, that worked out. I mean, I didn't realize that it was late in the season by the time I realized it. So, it was too late, but I left them there for the whole season, entire winter. And the next season they came up and, they were beautiful.
And you have just discovered how farming was first invented. Honest to God, that's how farming came about. Was that the way back in the day, the ancient cavemen? They had midden heats. They would throw all of their scraps into a pile, and they would have a circuit they would go around, so that they would come back and they would be staying in the same locations over and over. And people started noticing that plants that they had eaten the year before were now growing where they had thrown them away. Because they had thrown everything into a pile, they created a compost pile which stays warm and allows those seeds or potatoes, things like that, to survive. And that's how farming came to be. That's what tipped people off, was compost piles created the modern man that we know today.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it also kind of makes me wonder, well, wait a minute, what about, needing light to sprout thing? Because in my last garden, I had these two beautiful, nice wooden compost bins. And, if there was any light in there at all, it would, because they had lids. So maybe like crack between the pieces of wood or something. But these tomato plants that grew out of my compost bin, oh my gosh, they were so healthy and so intelligent. How they did that was beyond me, but they actually grew up through the tiny little cracks, in the wood, and grew out and, spread out like 10 more feet and had more tomatoes than any of the tomato plants that I planted.
Well, they're growing in some of the best stuff ever, if they're growing out of compost. Because I know my mom, it happened to my mom with oregano. She had a compost, one of those plastic compost bins.
Yeah.
But oregano started growing out of the bottom of one of it. And it was the most biggest, beautifulest oregano plant you've ever seen in your life. But it's growing in the best stuff ever. But yeah, I mean, to quote Jurassic Park, life will find a way.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Yeah, that blew my mind. It was, I'm definitely not complaining, but yeah, then it just makes me wonder, I guess maybe they don't need as much light as we think to sprout, because, the lid was always closed.
No, it's, as long as they have, as long as they have warmth and nutrients, they will sprout. And once they sprout, that legginess that you see, sometimes when you're growing seeds indoors, that's the plant trying to find light. And then, if you have something like your situation, there was probably 36 plants that started growing inside that compost pile, that dark compost pile. And 2 of them got leggy enough to make it to the light, and then they stopped at the light.
Okay, well, that makes sense. But it is that time again. How time flies when you're having fun. But we will be right back, everyone. So stay tuned. Heather Rhoades of Gardening Know-How here on SoulJourneysRadio.com.
It's time to get real and heal. MyTrueEssence.net would like to tell you about Modifiland brown seaweed extract. It's composed of an elementally rich seaweed called laminaria. It takes 40 pounds of laminaria to make just 1 pound of Modifiland. There's nothing else like Modifiland. It is the richest in alginate, fucoidin, organic iodine, and lamarian. Alginates are the most effective organic element in nature that enable the body to rid itself of heavy metals, radioactive elements, and toxins. Fucoidin is an extremely effective anti-cancer substance found abundantly in brown seaweed. Organic iodine is the greatest protection for the thyroid offered by nature. Laminarin aids in the prevention and treatment of cardiovascular disease. Go to www.mytrueessence.net and click the Modifiland banner to get started on your path to rich health today. Also check out the Healing Shop for proven essential oils, medicinal teas, and even health coaching. It's time to get real and heal. Go to www.mytrueessence.net.
Get real and heal. Listen to Christie on Soul Journeys Radio.
Welcome to the world's meeting place. American
It's practically narcotic.
Freedom
Oh, yes, I like very much.
Radio.
They're an American institution.
American Freedom Radio.
All right, welcome back, and thanks again for joining us here tonight. Soul Journeys Radio on AmericanFreedomRadio.com with our special guest tonight, Heather Rhoades of GardeningKnowHow.com. She is answering your questions, so if you would like to speak to her, the phone number is 218-339-8525, or if you'd like to join us on the text chat, that's over at souljourneysradio.com. And Heather, we were talking during the break about, compost surprises, things just, kind of growing, things that, I explained to you, I got some kind of weird hybridized squash gourd something. And, when this started growing, I was just like, well, that's cool, what the hell is that? And, just started Googling and, found some pictures that looked similar and ended up being a type of gourd, I guess. So is it, and I use all heirloom seeds. So, hybridization, of course, is, natural. Not everything hybrid is necessarily GMO. But, it kind of blew my mind what, I had this like tannish, pinkish, lightish, big, fat, wrinkly, monster zucchini looking thing. Just came out of the blue. Do you have any explanation for that?
Yeah, these sort of things happen. And, just to clarify, GMO is something where man has gone in and tinkered with chemicals and all sorts of laboratory things. Mm-hmm. Hybrid is just a cross-pollination that's happened. And there are forced cross-pollinations that happen that create such as the F1 trait, which is where it grows true the first year but not the second year, so you can't save the seeds.
Okay.
But it's, just keep that in mind too. But in your own garden, things cross-pollinate. And things to understand about cross-pollination, most plants, not all, but most plants, you will not see the effects of cross-pollination until you plant the seeds the following year.
Huh.
That's true for most plants. The only one that pops out of my head that's not true for is corn. If corn cross-pollinates, you see it the first year.
Oh, okay. Well, this was my first year in this home, last gardening season. I, built it in spring from scratch. And, I've never gone to the store and bought a gourd in my life. Mm-hmm. So it couldn't have come from the compost. None of my grow anything like that. So how would that have happened within the same season?
You have your friendly neighborhood flying birds. How that happens. Now, where the seed came from, or what plants it came from, or how it cross-pollinated, you may never know. But it's not uncommon for birds. That's the purpose of fruit. To tell you the truth, we like to eat tomatoes, and we like to eat, peas and all these types of things, apples. But the purpose of fruit is to get something to eat it, so that it takes it somewhere else and poops it out somewhere else. Literally, that's the purpose. So,
okay.
So it's very possible that it could have been a bird, it could have been a deer, it could have been a squirrel, it could have been anything that poops may have eaten a seed somewhere else.
Yeah.
And the seeds are specially designed. That's why, soaking seeds and being abusive to some kinds of seeds where you scrape them on sandpaper and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is helpful because seeds are designed to go through the digestive tract of plants or of animals.
Yeah.
So that they they go through the digestive tract, they come out in a little pile of wonderfully rich nutrients, which makes it a great place for them to grow.
Okay, and then it grows.
Right, and we were talking earlier, we were talking off off air about sewer lines. You know, someone mentioned the best watermelon plant they ever grew. That's because it was growing some of the best stuff ever. It's just that waste from animals that eat meat can be dangerous, so that's why we don't use it in our garden. But that doesn't mean that a plant doesn't grow really well in that sort of thing.
Okay. So, wow. All right. Okay, so I guess if your garden is right above your sewer, you don't really have anything to worry about?
Yeah, I mean, I actually have an article on the site about issues to think about if you're going to be growing over sewer lines, over different types of sewer systems that you can have in your yard. It can be safe and it can be dangerous, and there's nothing to say there's anything wrong with using that particular system. It's just you have to be aware of the issues that can come about.
Okay. So what are some of the issues? You said meat-eating animals and
right, and humans
obviously aren't that safe.
Yeah, humans are meat-eating animals. So if you're going over your sewer lines, you have listeria and you have problems with E. coli. And we've seen that in the news a lot lately, right? You know, mass-produced food. What happens in those situations is, particularly with leafy greens, it's hard to get them really clean. So they may be using, especially in organic farms, they may be using a spray made from manure. You get a little bit of, your worker there doesn't want to run all the way to the porta potty. He goes in the field, it gets sprayed on the leaves, it's spread that way. Same thing can happen if you're going over a sewer system. Leach lines are supposed to be fully contained and safe, but anybody who's ever had to deal with a septic system in their backyard, that's for like the first 3 months after it's built, that's the case, and then it's a small chance that you can get sick from that happening. It's just that you have to be aware that issue does exist.
Okay, well, I'm sure, I'm thinking of my compost pile, a cat may have peed on it before, or, a dog may have peed or pooed in it before or something. So, right. I mean, it's possible, but definitely not something to worry about.
Yeah, I would, especially with compost piles, cats and dogs tend to be attracted to sandy, open areas. Compost piles normally don't fit that bill.
Yeah, that's true.
So you probably aren't going to have to worry too much about an animal going in your compost pile. I'm talking more about, if you're growing in an area where your leach lines from your septic system.
Or humanure.
Right. And that's the same thing too. You don't want to, when your dog goes in the backyard, and everybody, at least here in Cleveland, spring comes and you have to do the backyard cleanup from your dog going all winter long. And that doesn't go in your compost pile. That's probably not a good idea. Get that cleaned up and get rid of it. And you could put it in your compost pile. It is nutrient rich. I'm not denying that. It's just that there are dangers to be aware of if you're going to be using that particular manure in your compost pile.
Okay, so maybe if a dog is sick and has worms or something, that probably would be good.
That would be bad. If your dog eats meat, and if your dog eats dog food, it eats some kind of meat, maybe not a lot.
Yeah.
But it's eating
who
meat.
knows what's in that?
But, animals that eat meat have special diseases that can develop and can be spread through their manure.
Okay.
So, you have pet hamster manure, great for your compost pile. Put the whole, when you clean out the hamster's cage, take everything.
Or bunnies or guinea pigs and such.
Goat, fantastic. Put it in your compost pile, rot it, and put it in your garden. It's great. When you start looking at animals that are omnivores or meat eaters, they start getting into some diseases that are unlikely to occur, but can occur. So.
Okay. All right. Well, what else? I'm looking at an article you have on your site, the basics of composting. So can you give us a little Cliff Notes version? What do we need to do, or what do we need to know about making our own compost?
Compost really comes down to understanding that you have to have a balance. It's all about balance. You kind of think of your compost pile as yin and yang. So you need greens and you need browns.
Mm-hmm.
So greens tend to be things like vegetable scraps from your kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we're going to get from the disease perspective. Yes, you can compost meat. Is it particularly a good idea? Probably not, because there is a slim chance that you could introduce disease into your compost pile, which then could transfer to your plant.
Okay.
So not to mention meats and anything with oil tends to attract pests.
Mm-hmm.
So you have your greens, vegetable scraps, live plants that you've pulled up, so like weeding. Those are greens. Fresh grass clippings, that sort of thing. All of these things are great for your bin, but you have to balance, because if you just put greens in your bin, you're going to get a really stinky compost pile. So you need to add some browns, and browns can be paper. Paper's a really popular one. Dry leaves, dry grass clippings are greens, are browns. So that works really well. Mix those two together. In what ratio tends to change? Well, different people have different advice. Some people say you need, a 3-to-1 ratio of dry to greens, brown to green. Others say you just need a 1-to-1 ratio of brown to green. I would say play around with it a little bit. It just really depends on where you live and what your environment is. If you're in a drier environment, you need less brown. If you're in a wetter environment, you need more brown to keep the pile healthy.
Okay, now I've read about quick composting methods where, people say, fill up a trash bag with a bunch of grass clippings and leaves and then throw some vinegar in there and close it up, and you have compost in a few days. How effective is that method really? Is the high acid content from the vinegar actually good for the garden in the long run?
I would be worried about the high acid content. Typically those sort of methods work, and they work the same as the small compost bins that turn a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's the high heat that does more than the vinegar itself.
Okay.
The high heat, because you're closing up the trash bag and you're leaving it out in the sun. They recommend a black trash bag, which even heats it up even faster, which creates, without the proper balance, you can end up with some pretty nasty smelling stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the vinegar comes in, because it wipes out some of that. I can't say for certain. My concern with that particular method would be that a lot of the nutrients that come out of composting come from good bacteria growth and microorganisms. With a high acid content, those microorganisms don't survive as well.
Okay. Huh. So, is that a method you've used or would recommend if somebody needs it in a pinch?
I haven't used it. To be honest, if you need organic material in your soil in a pinch, I would just say till in what you got.
Okay.
Don't push it through that particular system. If you've got grass clippings and you need some organic material in your sandy soil right now, till in the grass clippings. Don't go through that quick compost method. That's me personally, and I just want to be clear that I don't have any hard proof about that. It's just that in my years of gardening, that's my gut feeling on composting in a couple of days. You're better off just tilling it into the soil rather than going through that process.
Okay, so just till in the uncomposted organic material, we'd probably be better off. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, nature does that already.
Yeah.
You know, nobody is out there in the woods tilling in the leaves or, you know, composting the leaves in the woods.
Exactly, yeah.
They decompose, so, you know, put them in the soil. Again, test regularly because it can cause, you know, some nitrogen issues. Mm-hmm. But I think for the most part, you're better off just tilling it in if you need some quick stuff now, or quick organic material.
You know, that's what I did last year when I had just moved in here and had to build a garden quick, and it's like, oh crap, what do I do? And you know, I just ended up using the organic materials, you know, that I had saved from the kitchen scraps and leaves. I just put it all in there, and you know, the garden worked out. I don't really know the soil, but it did work out without using the vinegar method. So, okay, I tend to kind of go with you on this one, on your gut feeling, definitely. But it is that time.
It's time to get real and heal. MyTrueEssence.net would like to tell you about Modifiland brown seaweed extract. It's composed of an elementally rich seaweed called laminaria. It takes 40 pounds of laminaria to make just 1 pound of Modifiland. There's nothing else like Modifiland. It is the richest in alginate, fucoidin, organic iodine, and lamarian. Alginates are the most effective organic element in nature that enable the body to rid itself of heavy metals, radioactive elements, and toxins. Fucoidin is an extremely effective anti-cancer substance found abundantly in brown seaweed. Organic iodine is the greatest protection for the thyroid offered by nature. Laminarin aids in the prevention and treatment of cardiovascular disease. Go to www.mytrueessence.net and click the Modifiland banner to get started on your path to rich health today. Also check out the Healing Shop for proven essential oils, medicinal teas, and even health coaching. It's time to get real and heal. Go to www.mytrueessence.net.
Get real and heal. Listen to Christie on Soul Journeys Radio.
Welcome to the world's meeting place. American
It's practically narcotics.
Freedom
Oh, yes, I like very much.
Radio.
They're an American institution.
American Freedom Radio.
That's right. Let it grow. And that's what we are learning to do here tonight with Heather Rhoades of gardeningknowhow.com. Seriously, excellent information on her site. I mean, more questions than I can ever think of. So check it out, gardeningknowhow.com. And if for some reason you don't find what you're looking for, just click on contact, and her or one of the other garden experts will answer your question. And by the way, you did this total rehaul of your site recently, and it's just looking amazing. Job well done, Heather.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
They're very happy with the redesign. So hopefully it makes it easier for people to find information on the site and gives it a nice, sleeker look than we had before. So.
Yeah, it looks great. I forgot what the last one looked like already, but yeah,
okay. That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah. And if for some reason you can't find it, you can always use the search bar in the top right. So, okay, well, let me ask you this. You brought up tilling in the last segment, you know, just till it in, and which I totally agree with. And I'm really with you on the gut feeling about the vinegar thing, which is, you know, somebody taught me about that a few years ago. And I don't know, it just didn't feel right, so I didn't do it. But I did, as I was saying before we went to break, last year, trying to get my garden together in a pinch. I just, you know, threw the green, uncomposted organic material in, and everything worked out just fine. Mm-hmm. So yay for that. But tilling, I know we've talked about that in the past. Now, what are your recommendations on tilling? How often do we actually need to do that in our beds?
I actually don't till really often. I have raised beds, and the reason I don't till very often is the beds that I have, I don't walk on. So nothing gets compacted.
Okay.
tilling is helpful if you're starting a new bed. It's helpful if you're trying to work material in quickly into a bed. I think most people will find, though, that you can take your compost, you can take your grass clippings or whatever. As long as you have a relatively healthy bed already, you can lay that stuff right on top, and it works its way in.
Yeah.
Through nature. It's tilling is just one of those areas that can start a lot of fights, because some people are like, you got to till every year, 3 times a year. And then other people are like, don't touch it or you'll kill everything.
Fight over that. Oh, goodness.
I personally do not till every year. If I find that a bed has gotten a bit compacted, and we have pretty clay soil here, to me it means that I haven't put enough organic material into that bed. So I might till to work some organic material into the bed. Also here in Cleveland, by the time it's warm enough to till without damaging the soil, it's also half the season gone. So. Yeah,
you already have stuff growing. Okay.
Right. So, if I tried to till when I was going to plant my cabbage, I'd destroy my bed.
Yeah.
Because the ground's so cold and so wet, it's just not worth it.
Okay. So as long as you're, as a general rule, if you're not walking on your beds, it really doesn't need tilling every year, every season, or okay. That sounds about right. Okay, so I guess for raised beds, you wouldn't really need much, maybe other than, what are those little tools called with the 3 prongs? The little grabby thing?
Oh, the mantis.
There we go.
Are you talking about the mantis, or are you talking about the? Is it the thing you like pound it in the ground and twist it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. What are those called? Gophers or something like that? I can't remember.
I don't know. Oh, what did you say?
Gophers? I have one, and I can't remember the name of it.
Okay, yeah, I know. I have one too, and I have no idea what it's called, but it looks like a metal hand, basically,
right,
with less fingers. So I guess that would be suitable for raised beds to work in some extra organic material.
Yeah, you can use those. I have one, and I use it to break up the soil a little bit. But really, for the most part, look up lasagna gardening, lasagna beds.
Yeah.
And you can learn it. It's just the same. Like I said, out in the woods, when leaves fall, there's nobody out there tilling those leaves into the soil, and that material decomposes and works its way into the soil. The same happens in your own garden bed. You can make it go faster if you need to, but if you're maintaining healthy garden beds, there shouldn't really be a need for you to till that material into the soil.
Okay, that makes sense.
If it's someone like you and you're starting out with a new bed, you need to accelerate that rate. But for most people, they don't need to. Okay.
Now we're all guessing on the chat. What's that thing called? Someone said auger. Let's see. I'm Googling this. I don't know if that's what it is. No, that's not it either. You know what? I'm just going to call it a mini hand rake. So it's not a hoe. I know that. And it's not a shovel.
It was originally an as seen on TV product.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Years and years ago.
Oh, yeah, kind of. Okay, I just Googled hand rake just for shits and giggles, and you know what? This looks like that's what I'm going to call it. It's a hand rake. Okay. All right, but technically that's not necessary at all. And I have read about lasagna gardening and even done a little bit of that myself. It didn't require any tilling. Just throw the material in and plant the seeds, and boom, nature does its trick. In fact, somebody just posted on the chat, I have heard a philosophy that the earth is like a living organism, and when you till it, you disrupt it. And, that really makes sense. I mean, do you want anyone poking and prodding on your body?
Mm-hmm. If you're maintaining healthy beds, you shouldn't really need to till. Starting a new bed, that's a different thing. or if you have, or a herd of elephants or deer, in my case, went running over your beds, and compacted everything, then you may need to till. But other than that, you really don't need to till every year.
Okay. All right. Well, good to know, because it's that, I guess, time of year where we're thinking, oh, man, I don't want to get out there and till that whole darn thing. And okay, so, let me ask you this. As far as, obviously we mulch and such, what do you think about cedar chips as mulch?
Well, anytime you're using mulch, it's something you have to be really careful about, because you need to pay attention to your nitrogen levels. Mm-hmm. When you're coming out that big chunky stuff and it's decomposing, that requires nitrogen, and it can really just suck it right out of the soil.
Okay.
Cedar is pretty difficult to decompose, so you could have even more of a nitrogen leach because of that, because it's, nature's trying to work even harder to decompose them. I personally probably wouldn't use them in the garden, or in the vegetable garden. I might use them in my flower bed just because they'll stay looking nice longer.
Yeah.
But I would not be real keen on using them in my vegetable beds, because you want, whatever you're using for your mulch in your vegetable beds, you want it to decompose by next year. You want to be replacing that on a yearly basis.
Okay. Yeah, I've definitely heard conflicting things on cedar as mulch, but hey, you know what? I got like a ton of free, fresh cedar mulch when the power company was out, chopping trees and chipping them up. And I'm like, can I have that? So sure. So they dumped this big pile in my yard. And, so that's what I had, and that's what I used. It seems to be okay so far. But
yeah, it's not that it's going to, it's not that it's going to, ruin your beds or anything. Just, if you're going to use it, just get your soil tested. That's,
okay. So watch for nitrogen.
Right. And if you're seeing a problem with nitrogen, make sure you add it in.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. And then other people were saying that it's good for you. Most people say, no, don't ever use it. It's like that fight you were talking about with tilling. But then there's others that say, oh, well, it's really good because cedar is a natural bug repellent. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Like I said, it's my first year in this garden and using a lot of these materials here for the first time. So I guess, this season will really tell if any of that worked out, or if it's good or bad, or what I can do different here. But, I was kind of wondering what you would recommend, since I mulched with the cedar mulch, but then I have a whole new compost pile I need to add in for spring, and I hear the music, dang it.
I'm going to say really quick, test. Just get your soil tested.
Okay.
That's the best way to tell.
Yeah, and I guess we'll find out, right? We're here every month. First Tuesday of the month here on Soul Journeys Radio with Heather Rhoades. GardeningKnowHow.com is the website. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us here, Heather. I really appreciate your knowledge and wisdom, and plus you're fun and cool too. So thank you all for joining us. Oh, thank you. Thank you all for joining us here tonight. Abundant blessings and love to you all. Tomorrow night, we're going to have Todd Caldecott, author of Food as Medicine. So join us, same time, same place, souljourneysradio.com.
It's time to get real and heal. MyTrueEssence.net would like to tell you about Modifiland brown seaweed extract. It's composed of an elementally rich seaweed called laminaria. It takes 40 pounds of laminaria to make just 1 pound of Modifiland. There's nothing else like Modifiland. It is the richest in alginate, fucoidin, organic iodine, and lamarian. Alginates are the most effective organic element in nature that enable the body to rid itself of heavy metals, radioactive elements, and toxins. Fucoidin is an extremely effective anti-cancer substance found abundantly in brown seaweed. Organic iodine is the greatest protection for the thyroid offered by nature. Laminarin aids in the prevention and treatment of cardiovascular disease. Go to www.mytrueessence.net and click the Modifiland banner to get started on your path to rich health today. Also check out the Healing Shop for proven essential oils, medicinal teas, and even health coaching. It's time to get real and heal. Go to www.mytrueessence.net.
Get real and heal. Listen to Christie on Soul Journeys Radio.
You're listening to the future of talk. American Freedom Radio. This is American Freedom Radio.